Okay, now we're going to look at David Hume, who is another British empiricist. John Locke was an empiricist and Berkeley was an empiricist. But I want you to compare Locke and Berkeley, because although they both agree that nothing is ever present to the mind but perceptions, they seem to both agree about this, which is certainly something that's associated with Berkeley, the idea that all of our knowledge, it comes from the senses, and that's why they're called empiricists. Yeah, both Locke and Berkeley and Hume. So they all agree on that fact, that all of our knowledge comes from the senses. But remember that John Locke posited the idea of substance, bare particulars, this thing without properties, yeah, which was a real world in John Locke's opinion. And so John Locke was a realist. He believed in a real world that is independent of the mind. Berkeley is often called an idealist because, unlike Locke, he asserted that only mind exists. Yeah, Locke believed that there was some kind of substance behind all of these perceptions that we have, and this substance without properties, he called it bare particulars, or he gave it a couple of different names, but yeah, bare particulars, this idea of substance without any properties. But Berkeley said that's not the case, you know, that doesn't exist, this substance. The only thing that exists is mind. Yeah, and we can see this because we only get our knowledge from perceptions. Okay, so very different positions from Locke and Berkeley, and that's why Berkeley's called an idealist and Locke is called a realist. And so we need to know what side of the debate is David Hume on, because he certainly agrees with Berkeley that nothing is ever present to the mind but perceptions. Okay, he certainly agrees with that. And you can see it here in this next quote. Oh, perhaps we'll come on to that in a second, actually, because I wanted to look at what Newton said first. Because I think if we look at what Newton said, we can start to understand Hume's position a little bit better. But it does seem to me that he disagreed with Locke, that there is something without properties, that there's this substance behind everything that doesn't have properties. Okay, so what did Newton was around at this time, Isaac Newton, the great scientist, and he was trying to describe nature, yeah, the laws of nature, and he discovered a very important law of nature involving gravity, yes, and he mathematically described the processes of gravity, yeah, with incredible precision for this period, certainly. And what did Newton say? Well, Newton said, when he was, Newton was immediately criticised, you might be surprised to know. Now, why was he criticised? Because his explanation of gravity did not include a mechanism, yeah? Gravity works almost like magic when you look at Newton's laws, yeah? And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is you can't see anything pulling object A to object B. You can't see anything pulling me down to the earth. There is no mechanism for gravity. Yeah, that Newton described anyway. Newton does not describe a mechanism. And for that, he was certainly criticised. What did he reply? Well, have a look at this, because I think it's quite an interesting reply, and I think we can say something very similar about David Hume. So that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else is, to me, so great an absurdity. Gravity must be caused by an agent, whether material or immaterial. I have left to the consideration of my readers. Okay, so what Newton is saying is that there must be a mechanism. It's just that I don't know what it is. I don't even know if it's material or immaterial. Now, what does he mean here by material and immaterial? Well, maybe immaterial could mean God, yeah, because God is not necessarily a material thing, although you might argue that he is, but often he's not described in that way. But maybe God is what pulls me down to the planet, yeah, maybe God is responsible for gravity, but Newton's not making that claim. Or maybe it's a material mechanism. Now, what could be a material mechanism for gravity? Well, Newton had a friend at the time, and you can look him up on Wikipedia, a guy called Fatio, Nicholas Fatio. And I've also written another name here called Lesage, because this guy, Lesage, came along about 50 or 100 years after Fatio, after Newton, and developed this mechanism for gravity. Because Fatio came up with a mechanism for gravity. Now, it's not what the scientists assert is the case nowadays, but it is a mechanism. It is a theory which describes gravity mechanistically. Now, what is this mechanism? If you're interested, Fatio came up with the idea that there are microscopically small particles everywhere, even in space, that they're flying around everywhere in random directions. And if this is the case, well, that means that two bodies will be attracted towards each other, because they will shadow the, some of the microscopically small particles will slow down when they hit these planets, so they will fall in each other's shadow, and this will give them a force between them, an attraction, which will vary as a square of the distance. Yeah, and so exactly the same as gravity, as Newton's laws of motion describe mathematically. And so this actually was a physical mechanism. This idea is a material mechanism for gravity. But Newton, even though he was good friends with this Fatio, some even say lovers, obviously I don't know that, but he was good friends with this Fatio, and Fatio this is the first recorded example of a mechanistic theory of gravity, and it's really interesting. It's a fascinating idea, and if you're interested in it, have a look at Lesage's theory of gravity, because he took